By noon, Karen's doorbell had rung 17 times. She'd stopped answering after the third reporter showed up, but that didn't stop the parade of neighbors, HOA board members, and what appeared to be a process server from gathering on her front lawn. Mrs. Middleton. The voice belonged to Detective Rodriguez, whose badge she could see through her peephole. We need to speak with you about an incident this morning. Karen's hands trembled as she opened the door, still wearing the same pink slippers that had carried her to infamy. There's been a misunderstanding. According to multiple witnesses, you threw boiling water in the direction of children. That's assault, ma'am. I was watering my plants. The lie sounded even more ridiculous the second time. And the children were violating multiple HOA regulations. Detective Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. Ma'am, threatening children with hot water over pool toys is not a proportional response to an HOA violation. Behind the detective, Karen could see her neighbors forming clusters on the sidewalk. Mrs. Chen was still filming. The Morrison children peeked out from behind their mother's legs, wide-eyed and curious now, rather than terrified. I need to see that kettle, Rodriguez continued, and we'll need a full statement. As Karen led him to her kitchen, her phone exploded with notifications. The neighborhood Facebook group had become a battlefield, with her few remaining allies quickly jumping ship. Board member Patricia Williams had already posted a statement calling for an emergency meeting to discuss leadership accountability. Mrs. Middleton, Rodriguez said, examining the kettle, this thing holds 2 quarts. If this water had hit those kids. But it didn't. Karen's voice cracked. I have excellent aim. I was making a point about property values and community standards. By threatening children, Karen's carefully constructed worldview began to crumble. For 3 years, she'd been the guardian of Willowbrook Heights, the defender of property values, the enforcer of order. She issued 847 violation notices, attended 156 city council meetings, and maintained a 94% compliance rate with community guidelines. But sitting in her pristine kitchen, watching a police officer examine her weapon of choice, she began to see herself through other eyes, not as a dedicated public servant, but as a middle-aged woman who just terrorized children over a kiddie pool. I think, she said quietly, I may have made a mistake. Rodriguez looked up from his notepad. That's a start. The Morrison family is considering pressing charges, but they're willing to discuss alternatives if you're genuinely remorseful. Alternatives: community service, anger management, resignation from the HOA board. He paused, and a public apology. Through her kitchen window, Karen could see the crowd growing. Channel 7's news van had arrived, and she spotted the distinctive hair of investigative reporter Maria Santos, setting up for what would undoubtedly be a scathing expose on Hewolo Power gone wrong. Her phone buzzed with a text from her daughter in Seattle. Mom, you're trending on TikTok, #BoilingWater Karen. What the hell happened? Karen sank into her breakfast nook chair, the same chair where she'd planned countless HOA campaigns, written hundreds of violation notices, and dreamed of a perfectly ordered community. Now it felt like an electric chair. What happens next? She asked Detective Rodriguez. That, he said, closing his notepad, depends entirely on what you do in the next 24 hours. The emergency HOA board meeting was held in the community center at 7 p.m., and Karen had never seen it so packed. Every folding chair was occupied, with residents standing along the walls and spilling out into the hallway. The local news crews had set up outside, their bright lights turning the parking lot into a media circus. Karen sat at the front table, flanked by the 4 remaining board members who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Patricia Williams, the vice president, had already distanced herself by arriving separately and refusing to make eye contact. The chair recognizes Mrs. Morrison, Patricia announced, her voice echoing through the suddenly quiet room. Janet Morrison stood up, her children beside her. Little Susie held a crayon drawing of a stick figure throwing water at other stick figures. My kids couldn't sleep last night, Janet began, her voice steady but filled with emotion. They asked me if the angry lady was going to hurt them again. An 8-year-old and a 6-year-old shouldn't have to feel unsafe in their own backyard. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Karen felt heat rise in her cheeks, but not from anger this time, from shame. However, Janet continued, Mrs. Middleton called me this afternoon. She apologized. Not one of those fake apologies where someone says I'm sorry you were offended, but a real one. She acknowledged that she scared my children and that her behavior was completely inappropriate. Karen's phone had been buzzing nonstop since her awkward apology video went viral, surprisingly, for positive reasons. Hashtag Karen Redemption was now trending alongside hashtag Boiling Water Karen, with thousands of comments praising her for taking responsibility. I moved to accept Mrs. Middleton's resignation as HOA president, Patricia announced, clearly eager to move things along. Seconded. Came voices from multiple directions. Karen stood up, her legs unsteady. Before you vote, I want to say something. The room fell silent. I became HOA president because I loved this neighborhood. I wanted to protect our property values and maintain standards. But somewhere along the way, I forgot that this isn't just a collection of houses. It's a community of people, families, children who just want to play in kiddie pools on summer mornings. She looked directly at the Morrison children. Susie, Tommy, I'm sorry I scared you. There's no excuse for what I did. Adults aren't supposed to act like that, and I promise I'll do better. The vote was unanimous. Karen Middleton was no longer HOA president. As the meeting dispersed, Karen found herself face-to-face with Detective Rodriguez. The Morrison family has decided not to press charges, he said quietly. But you'll need to complete 40 hours of community service and attend anger management classes. Thank you, Karen whispered. Walking to her car through the gauntlet of news cameras, Karen felt something she hadn't experienced in years: relief. The weight of being the neighborhood enforcer, the constant vigilance, the need to control every minor infraction was gone. But as she drove home past the Morrison house, she noticed something that made her pulse quicken. The kiddie pool was gone, replaced by a large wooden playset that definitely wasn't mentioned in any HOA architectural approval forms she'd seen. Karen gripped the steering wheel tighter, then forced herself to breathe deeply. Tomorrow, she'd probably get a call from the new HOA president about the unauthorized playground equipment. And for the first time in 3 years, it wouldn't be her problem to solve. Still, old habits die hard. She made a mental note to check the community guidelines about playground installations, just out of curiosity. Some things, apparently, never change. The question was, would Karen? The kettle whistled like a banshee as Karen Middleton stormed across her pristine backyard, her pink fuzzy slippers squelching against the wet grass. Through the chain-link fence, she could see them, those Morrison brats splashing around in their inflatable pool at 7:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, their shrieks of joy piercing through her morning meditation playlist. Noise ordinance violation, she muttered, gripping the kettle's handle until her knuckles turned white. Pool installation without HOA approval. Probably a water usage violation too. The sight of 8-year-old Toni Morrison doing a cannonball into the kiddie pool was the final straw. Karen had been the Willowbrook Heights HOA president for 3 years, and she'd be damned if she let these property values plummet on her watch. Hey! She bellowed over the fence. It's not even 8 o'clock. The children froze like deer in headlights. Little Susie Morrison, barely 6, looked up with wide eyes. We're just playing, Mrs. Middleton. Playing. Karen's voice cracked like a whip. This is a residential neighborhood, not a water park. Without thinking, she raised the kettle and poured the boiling water over the fence. The water asked through the air, steam rising like a ghostly apparition. It splashed harmlessly into the grass beside the pool, but the message was clear. The children scrambled out, running toward their house with terrified squeals. Karen Middleton. The voice belonged to Janet Morrison, who came barreling out of her back door in a bathrobe, her face flushed with rage. Did you just throw boiling water at my children? Karen's heart hammered against her ribs. The empty kettle felt suddenly heavy in her hands. I was watering my garden. Your garden is on the other side of your yard. Janet's voice carried across 3 backyards, drawing curious faces to windows. And that steam, I saw the steam. The water wasn't that hot. Karen lied, her voice taking on that practiced HOA authority tone. And technically, according to Section 4.2 of the Community Guidelines, recreational water features require approval. Are you out of your mind? Janet climbed onto a patio chair to see over the fence better. You could have seriously hurt them. Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish. She'd meant to make a point, to establish dominance, to remind everyone who ran this neighborhood. Instead, she potentially committed assault with a kitchen appliance. Her phone buzzed, probably another neighbor reporting the incident. "This isn't over," Janet promised, her voice deadly calm now. "I'm calling the police, and the HOA board, and Channel 7 News if I have to." As Janet disappeared into her house, Karen stood frozen in her yard, clutching the empty kettle. Through her peripheral vision, she could see Mrs. Chen from next door recording everything on her phone. The Hendersons across the street were openly staring from their window. Her phone buzzed again. Then again, the neighborhood group chat was probably exploding right now. Karen's perfectly manicured world was about to come crashing down, and she had no idea how to stop it.